Dara by Jessica Lott. She's perfect, and you know how I searched Maria. It's Wednesday, and I'm overdoing Mrs. A's house. I'm done scrubbing the tub, and I'm waiting for her to stop talking so I can do the faucets. She's going on about her new boarder, Dara, who, like me, is attending college. Absolutely brilliant. A European from Spain. I believe her family's quite wealthy. Oh, dear, make sure you get the soap scum from the little ledge there. Last time you left quite a bit. What's she studying? I ask. Mrs. doesn't know. I'm studying English literature, even though my sister says it's the stupidest thing she's ever heard of. Who do you think you are, Gomela? You gotta make money when you come out. You got loans. She acts like I don't feel the pressure too, living with her and her 3 kids in a minuscule 2-bedroom way up in East Harlem. Next time I'm over there, Dara's out again. Mrs. owns a 4-floor townhouse in Chelsea, and Dara's got the parlor off the kitchen. I asked whether I'll be cleaning it too. No, Dara said that wouldn't be necessary, as if she's doing me a favor. She now knows Dara's major, biology. Also, Dara has a steady boyfriend in Paris, and her mother is dead. She keeps referring to Dara as orphan. Her following me around like this is reminding me of the old days when she was afraid I was going to steal something and used to lock up a fancy silver when I was around. Just as Mrs. was telling me how Dara plays both bridge and cribbage, Dara herself comes in the door. Whatever I was expecting, it wasn't this. Mamie is beautiful. She's got this shiny dark hair and this little porcelain face like a doll I used to have. She's got style too, rocking the thigh-high boots. I'm struck stupid and feeling super embarrassed in my scrubs. I wear them so as not to get the other stuff dirty, but also because, although Mrs. would never say it, I know she likes the idea of her employees in uniform. Mrs. introduces us, and we shake hands real proper. I get a flash of brilliance to impress her with my Castilian Spanish. Encantada, Dara, ¿qué tal? She looks at me like I just released frogs out of my mouth. See, she says, in the most Anglo accent you ever heard, and then bolts into her room. Mrs. is still smiling. I forgot, you speak Spanish too, she says to me, her Colombian maid. After this, Dara avoids me. Her and Mrs. can usually be found together, laughing their asses off at a game of Jim Rummy. Mrs. teasing her, oh, no you don't, you sly thing. I've never heard her talk this way, like she's flirting. I admit I'm a little jealous of the friendship. It doesn't help that they giggle about me whenever I leave the room. I'm still trying to figure Dara out. She acts all up-class Rockefeller, but there's something real slick about her. She's got the look of someone who hustles in my neighborhood. Are you crushing on her or something? My girlfriend says to me. You can shut up about it. It's true. I'm seriously fascinated. The lies just keep coming. Dara doesn't drink alcohol, according to Mrs., but last week, she's in the kitchen reeking of tequila, filling up her plastic jug with Gatorade. Dara's ill today, Mrs. says behind her. No running the vacuum cleaner on the first floor. She needs rest. Then, from where Mrs. can't see, Dara winks at me. I'm so surprised I almost dropped the Clorox. I don't know why he's still working for that racist old bitch anyway, Trina says. Lito told you he could get you work at the Starbucks he's at, with benefits. Once Pavo does you a favor, you gotta hear about it for the next 40 years. And I'm happy where I'm at now. I actually like my afternoons at Mrs.'s, especially when I'm alone, just the ticking clock and her books and the sun over the hardwood floors. It's so pretty. You don't even hear the traffic because the windows are double paned. No one I know lives like this. It's like one of the houses in my Austen novels for class. And I like Mrs. too, in a weird way, even though she's a little racist and she's definitely a homophobe. One of her favorite topics is the homosexual's urge to marry. As if it's a sexual urge. I've heard it before. Hell, my own mama said worse. But for a while, it was making me feel self-conscious how she kept bringing it up. As if it was her way of letting me know she was on to me. She's dropped it since, so maybe I was just being paranoid. To make Trina feel better, I say, maybe next semester I'll get a different job. Stay away from Dara. I wouldn't be surprised if she likes girls too. Nah, I say. 2 weeks later, Dara appears behind me when I'm looking at one of Mrs.'s books. I nearly jump out of my skin. She laughs. Hey. Hey, I say back. I wait to see if there's more. She's lounging on the sofa arm in a pair of cuffs and no bra, asking me about school. And then she says, I saw you a couple of nights ago. Oh yeah? I say, kind of flirty. Where was that? At the Kitty Cat, on 4th. I freeze. There's strippers and a whole lot of coke and fucked up girls pass through there. It's not a good place. I wound up doing lines I'm totally regretting the entire night. I'm still ashamed. That's supposed to be the life I left behind now, but I'm in school. In fact, the shame's so strong, I don't even think to wonder, what was Dara doing in a dyke bomb? She seems to get this. I would have said hi, but you are really trashed. She saunters out of the room, even has the nerve to shake her ass. That's when I started to sour on Dara. I wasn't the only one. 2 days later, I get it from Mrs. that Dara's months behind on the rent. I understand how hard it is when you're in school, but she needs to be more frugal. The phone bill is several $100 this month. She's probably lost track of time talking to her boyfriend overseas. But still, the card games and good cheer have stopped. Dara is never home. The one time I see her, she's breezing in with bloomy shopping bags like she's been on a spree. She passes right in front of Mrs., who's dying to have it out with her, and slam into her room. Mrs. face is real red. The nerve! A week later, there's a lock outside of Dara's door. A big-ass lock, too. A master bolt. I'm that curious, but I don't want to bring up the subject since I don't know who installed it. Dara. Mrs. is in her bedroom telling me all about it. Huge holes that she put in the antique moldings. Just the thought of it is making me ill. Don't get yourself so worked up or you really will get sick, I tell her. Dara is enough to do that to anybody. Mrs. wants me to move her armchair across the door from Dara's room. We also moved a reading lamp and a small table. It looks like a scene from an Arthur Miller play. Mrs. hands me the keys to the upper 2 floors. We take a tour with instructions on what doors I need to lock behind me. Meanwhile, whispering her theories, I bet Dara has seen a new boy. That's why she's been so distant. Dara doesn't seem to have many male friends, I say. Mrs. is nodding her head enthusiastically. I know. That's what makes it so odd. She returns to the armchair. Both of us stare at Dara's door and listen to the faint sounds of a Liz Phair song. A week later, Mrs. is still keeping watch. Her hair's all sticking up in places, and she hasn't been putting on her makeup, and you can see the age spots on her face. She's got a notebook set up to record Dara's movements. You've been sleeping in this chair, I ask her, alarmed. What's she doing in there? I heard her yesterday. It sounded like she was moving furniture, but it's been quiet since this morning. I think it's time to serve some eviction papers. Mrs. doesn't seem to care about that. Instead, she's worrying, do you think she's sick? And that's why she hasn't come out. No, she's not coming out because she knows you're sitting here. What are you going to do anyway, arrest her? What? have a discussion with her. We're both reasonable people. If there's a good reason why she can't afford the rent, we'll work something out, payment plan. We need to get Tony over here. Tony is her handyman and generally worthless, but he has a serious toolkit and he can remove that lock. But we can't. It's her private space. This is your house, I remind her. And because she's not getting up, I go and make the call. Mrs. and I huddle together behind Tony as he works. Her hands are shaking. I'm nervous too. What if Dara sprawled out on the floor? An overdose. Suicide. Or what if she's waiting for us with a gun to throw acid in our faces? Has she been shitting and pissing in there holed up for so long, like a horror scene? So when we finally get the door open, it's more shocking to see that it's just a room, exactly as it was before she moved in. The bed's made, the floor's washed, it smells like pine sol. The three of us tiptoe in as if we're entering a church. In the middle of the floor, there's a pile of clothes, fancy shoes, some nice editions of books. I recognize Mrs.'s mix. Dara's stolen these things. But that doesn't make sense. Everything's gone. This stuff's been left behind on purpose. And there's other things in the pile too, some sexy lingerie that Mrs. would never wear. Then it dawns on me where it all came from. And I think how stupid I can be about the world and people. It makes me feel bad. Tony's crouching down like he wants to touch the underwear. When I become aware of a sound that I haven't heard since I was a kid, a high-pitched squeal that dying rabbits make. It takes me a moment to realize that it's coming from Mrs. And by then she's going ballistic on him. Don't touch her things, leave them alone. She starts bawling, her hands in her face, and falls down on top of the stuff. Tony is out of there. And I'm standing like a statue over this woman who's crying as if she's seconds from going insane. I'm not hesitating because of my job. As I calculated, I've already lost this job. I'm hesitating because I never touched Mrs. before. And these silent arrangements we have with other people about who is boss, they are very strong. But in the end, we're just two women in a room. And one of us is having a meltdown because she's been betrayed and left behind. I know what that feels like. So I get down on the floor with her and I hold her hand. Because if it was me, that's what I'd want someone to do.